We have risen from the ashes to school the masses. Hello, everyone. Welcome to another edition of the Scholars of Wrestling Show. I'm a man behind the microphone, Scholar Jeff. Joining us, as always, is Scholar Tarek. Scholar Tarek, I'm sorry, back it up. The OG undisputed scholar himself, Scholar Tarek. So, my apologies, Scholar Tarek. I was just about to ask you, have you read any good news stories lately?
Well, considering this is still the first week of 2023, 5 days later, we pretty much get already one of the biggest news of the year. And it just leaves a sour taste in my mouth. The enjoyment that I was really looking forward to this year, not so much right now.
Yeah, apparently someone's off on a ruined 2023 any percent speed run. But before we get to all that, let's introduce our other partner in crime this week. You know him, you love him. He is the Scholars of Wrestling Heavyweight Champion of the world. He is also an undisputed scholar. He is the one only Scholar Brian. Scholar Brian, how's your evening going?
Not too bad. It didn't take long, did it?
No.
Less than a week.
2023 decided to look at 2022. It was like, I could do you one better.
Oh, yeah.
2023 went, hold my beer.
More
Oh,
like
not even a
2023,
weekend
it's
yet.
2023 is more like, oh, you're drinking beer? Well, I'm bringing on the whiskey.
How? Well, I'll tell you what, we're going to get to all of that and more because this entire episode, it seems, is going to be loaded with a little segment we like to call Backstage News.
Indeed. We should just go ahead, not peek behind this curtain, just walk right through. Just go around backstage, strolling along. Oh, look, there's catering. Let's go and see what's going on over there. All right, good. Catering's on. Oh, really good. Yummy. Good, really good. Keep going. Yeah, still going. Oh, look, more back. Yeah. And now we'll just sit back, enjoy the locker room, and check in on that little
Backstage news.
News.
He's back, man.
Meh of the century, so it seems. But we're going to get to all that. Before we get to the big news of the week, breaking not even 24 hours ago, let's get to some good news, shall we? Because even at the beginning of the year, before we got to all this hubbub, we do have some good news coming from Wrestle Kingdom because they just saw the debut of the former Sasha Banks, now coming out as Mercedes Moné, challenging Kairi Sane, or just Kairi at this point. And yeah, it's looking like we've got a showdown between Mercedes and Kairi at February 18th in the States.
And she is officially signed right now to NJPW. So,
like the good weeb she is.
Yeah, I don't know what that means for anything else, but this is back when everybody was still happy. So this was everything I wanted it to be. It was very nice to see her back in a wrestling standpoint, knowing that she's been doing modeling, she's been doing acting, she's been doing all kinds of other things, building her brand for when she's done wrestling, which could be sooner rather than later because she's grown bigger than the business at this point. But it's I'm glad to see that she's back and doing good things, and I'm excited to see what she can do in NJPW and see where it rolls on from there, because it could turn into other things coming out of that.
Tarek, what's your immediate reaction to Mercedes Monet finally ending all of the speculation and finally landing in NJPW?
The only real reaction that I got out of it is that I'm happy that she didn't leave the wrestling industry on such a bad note by walking out of WWE with Naomi. She's she's now in a business where she can take what she got under WWE, like the presentation of her character and her in-ring skills, and is now bringing it to New Japan Pro Wrestling. And I couldn't be any more excited for her and where it could go from here. I'm hoping for just a one-off match against Britt Baker, DMD, at the next Forbidden Door. That's what I'm looking forward to. That was my immediate reaction to her debuting in NJPW.
Yeah, that was probably the second one for me after It's About Damn Time. But that's where my mind went to, where my mind first went to, okay, what's going to happen in Forbidden Door? Who's she going to face? The potential crossover for AEW, or at least even if she's just there for a cup of coffee. The potential for
She's
matches
not,
is
yeah.
wonderful.
Mm-hmm. She's going to be there for, just one match. She's not going to be in a contract or anything. I don't think she's going to be that committed. Because like what Brian said, she's got her other plans for her brand, acting, modeling, whatever. So she's going to get what she wants out of New Japan. And I think it would be actually perfect for her style, knowing her history, how she was in WWE, where she literally pretzels herself. So she can go to that extreme. And as I put it, shorten her career a lot more.
But she will also be doing it in Japan with someone who she knows. So, like the
Exactly.
good weeb she is, I'm sure she's having the time of her life right now. She already got her Ribera jacket, if you saw the pictures.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, here's my question though.
I love the hair.
Go ahead.
I love the presentation
Oh yeah, it was very
that she
that
came out.
headpiece. Yeah.
The headpiece, all that, the robe. It was fantastic.
Still can't quite get past the hair though. I gotta be honest. It's a little.
Hot rod.
I don't think anybody can pull that off.
Hey,
It strikes me as a little too much Bam Bam Bigelow, if you know what I mean.
It took a while to get used to the blue hair too, but everybody got there. So so
I think it's more like my eyes don't automatically register it as flames just because of how it's patterned on her hair. Like she needs to be like
My
leaning
immediate
to.
response was hot rod.
Hey, I get it, but it's just like I want to accept it, I want to embrace it, but it's like my eye when I visually scan my eyeballs, it just does not compute. Something just doesn't add up, but I realize that's going to be totally up to subjective opinion. But
I say give it
all that
time.
being, I'm sure it'll grow on me. I'm positive. But all that aside, my scholar's quick talk question to you all right now is at this showdown, which I believe is going to be in California on the 18th of February. The question I've got for you is, does Mercedes take the title off of Kyrie?
I don't see how you don't pull that trigger.
There's one thing that makes me cautious, and that says it's one thing when she's in the States and she gets to do this. Who knows what if she's got the schedule open to being a regular in Japan, or
well,
is she just gonna keep coming back and forth, or who knows? I
Also,
don't know.
remember, a lot of the United States wrestlers have held titles in NJPW before, and they just show up for the big shows. Okay, that is a thing that they can do. and NJPW, the NJPW women's title is a semi new thing. So it's like I don't think they're really ensconced in like long title reigns, and there's not really much of a history for the NJPW women's title. So I can see them being more willing to pull the trigger on that kind of a title change than say uh, Okada. Okada randomly losing it in the States to somebody just coming in. Okay. But for a women's title, a woman with the stature, with the name brand of a Mercedes Varnado, Mercedes Monet. Okay, I I think that the Japanese people and NJPW fans would be more willing to roll with that. So I can see that title change happening more than anybody else going in and winning it on their first try. Remember, Moxley won the United States title in what was it, his first match over at NJPW. So it's like it's not like it hasn't been done before.
Yeah, it's certainly possible. A lot of things are possible. The question now is, do we think it's going to happen? Something about me tells me, my gut's just telling me no. I don't have anything to go on. Tarek, what do you think?
I'm gonna have to side with Brian on this one. It's like just it's gonna go. It'd be very silly of them not to, because it will just put so much attention to that title, so much attention to NJPW in general, with her holding that championship. It just, yeah, I just don't see them not doing it.
Because she brought a whole lot of eyes that had never watched NJPW before. Sasha Banks is more of a name brand than a John Moxley.
And they were watching. Most people were watching it for that debut.
Exactly.
At least the casuals.
The casuals who are getting up and watching wrestling at 3 a.m.
The Stan Twitter.
You'd be surprised.
The Twitter.
Anything's possible, I guess.
Yeah, you bring enough Twitter stands over to NJPW, they will love you forever. No.
And on that note, I suppose we can't delay it any longer. We gotta rip the band-aid off here. Easily the biggest news, not even just of the week, of the past 24 hours. We woke up this morning to find out that the rumors are true. Vince McMahon is back on the board of WWE. He is not, supposedly they're swearing up and down he's not in charge of creative, and he's only here to facilitate the eventual sale, strike while the iron's hot, so to speak, of WWE, thus theoretically making lots of money for their shareholders. However, goes without saying, everyone hears this and is immediately and understandably freaking out about this. Emotions are running high. I know, Tarek, you especially have just been chomping at the bit for most of the day. Thankfully, it seems like we're all a little calmed down, back down to reality here, but oh boy, was this a big news day.
Yeah, I definitely of everyone like on this show, I think I've been the most vocal of my disdain of this news of Vince McMahon inserting himself and what are the name of two? What was the name
Barrios
of the two?
and George Barrios and Michelle Wilson.
Yep. I'm terrible with names.
Here's the deal. At least on my end. Okay. It's all well and good that they're saying that these three are only coming in to facilitate the sale, and I'm willing to roll with that for now. But there's always this thought in the back of my head. He forced his way into this. He held the situation hostage. Okay.
Not even just the situation. He held the whole company hostage.
Yeah,
I think that's the part that
what,
actually infuriates me the most about how they're doing it, because the board is just like, Vince, we can't let you on right now because of still what's going on. So he decides to just take it into his own hands, being the majority shareholder, and just be like, well, I'm just going to go around you guys, and I'm just going to put myself back in, because I am just not going to let anybody discuss sales without me. And I'm making sure I have the final say in it. And
which leads to my final point. If he's able to do that with the shareholders, okay, it's all well and good that they're saying as of now that he's not going to be doing anything else. He's just on the board. He's just facilitating a sale. That's all well and good. That's 24 hours in. Okay, a month from now, what's stopping him from just going over people's heads again, firing people from the creative team and taking his so-called rightful place? Okay, that's where the issue is. Okay?
I've got actually might have a potential answer to that, but continue.
It's like, it's all well and good. You're saying these things, whatever. Okay, you held the company hostage. You've lost 5 of your shareholders. You fired 3, 2 quit. Okay, so it's like you're already not off to a good start. Okay, and now, okay, based off of the SmackDown, it still seems like it's going the way it's been going. So that's good. There's optimism. I will go with it for now. But if I start seeing shit that I was seeing at the beginning of last year, if we start going back towards that, okay, you don't have to tell me what's going on. I already know. Okay.
And so will all the shareholders. I think that's going to be the biggest indicator and trump card for anyone who's opposed to Vince McMahon's coming back. But again, big gears grind slowly. We're going to be seeing quite a bit in the next several months.
Yeah, it's kind of hard. It's really hard to argue, like, with what Brian's fears and all this, because, like you said, the man decided to just go on his own and just insert himself back on the board, insert 2 people that are loyal to him, even though in the past he's fired both of them. What was it, in 2020?
Something like that.
Around that time. Yeah. Two other ones decide to resign because absolutely no one in WWE, anybody in any department, didn't want Vince McMahon back, because they know this man. They know that he is the biggest egomaniac who is wanting to just put himself in so much control, because he is a control freak. The man hates sneezing because you can't control that. The man hates sleeping because you are not working. The man is just is such a control freak. The idea of him not like having those urges to want to go back in creative, head or not, but knowing Vince McMahon, he would want to just come back in as head of creative. It's a scary thought. It scares the bejesus out of me. Once the sale is over and Vince just gets a whole lot of money from this sale, because that just is just one thing just to continue just adding more in his pocket. But if he just went like, especially for WrestleMania season, for him to come in and be like, actually, you know what? I have these ideas that I want to do for WrestleMania, is very a Vince McMahon thing. And while at the end of last year, we were all excited for a Triple H led Royal Rumble, a Triple H led WrestleMania, the window is slowly closing at those, knowing Vince could very well just insert himself wherever he wants to, being the majority shareholder.
I hear those concerns, and while it is a possibility, it's a lot of things are possible. I just don't think they're likely, and they're because we've got so many different other factors floating around. I'll explain. While this certainly does not bode well, there's a number of other factors floating around, including the perception that everyone already has. Obviously, there's no denying the impact that Triple H has had in terms of morale on the company at large. It's made WWE not even better from a production standpoint, but it's also made WWE a destination that people aspire to and want to work for again. So I don't believe that's wasted at all on the talent and employee level. That's number one. Number two is the stockholders and the stock price. There was a jump in WWE stock recently, but it was not the cause. The cause of it was not Vince McMahon coming back. It was the potential of a sale. So, and the idea that all of the shareholders, no matter who they are going to stand to make a whole heck of a lot of money on this. Meanwhile, let's not forget that this last time the stock price jumped anywhere near that high or even way higher was when Vince McMahon left initially. So believe me, everyone of importance, they all know what the real message is. And
I believe and everything you say is true, but we also have to take into account that I guarantee you Vince McMahon believes that the stock prices went up because he came back.
Oh no, he made.
We don't know
it was
that.
not even because it is.
He's got that kind of ego on him.
No, it was shown. It was shown when he made the announcement that he's coming back for the sale. Is when the prices is when the stock went up.
Oh, I know. I know that.
That's exactly why he did come back.
But what I'm saying is, okay, we know, the stockholders know, Vince McMahon knows that it's because of the sale, but there's also probably a tiny little piece of Vince's brain that it's also because of me.
Well, here's the thing with that.
Coming back. That's it.
Here's the thing with that, though. There have been some other things floating around where if you read the letters that he put out after making it abundantly clear that A, he was coming in to properly facilitate a proper sale of the company, and two, that he had no intention of interfering with operations at all. I believe that phrasing in a public notarized document was completely 100% intentional. Because if he does not do that and he lets his ego get the best of him, I believe there is a lot of trouble that is potentially coming from the SEC and the stockholders. That's there's a definite case that can come up here. Could he fight it and just end up burying the company? Technically, yes. He absolutely could do that. The possibility does exist. But it also means burying what he's spent his entire life building up up until this point and reducing it to a shell of his former self, if it even exists at all. And as big as his ego is, I think it's big enough at least to not want to see that happen.
Oh, if he's
Yeah.
if he's at the point where he's thinking, if I'm going down, I'm going to take what I built with me. He is more. I think he's more than capable of. Excuse me. He's more than capable, or to
Yeah.
actually let his ego get the better of him.
I'm not.
With
I'm.
especially with how the hardcore Vince McMahon crowd see this. They see him thinking Vince McMahon is WWE. If these morons actually see Vince McMahon willing to destroy the company with him being the lethal dose of poison, which I love that people are now catching on. It's like, oh, they're catching up with me with the idea of Vince McMahon actually being the lethal dose of poison that I've been saying for literal years. Welcome back. Thanks for catching up, internet wrestling community. Good for you. Vince, I just don't have. If he may have said that he will not interfere with like creative or other
And
Any
regular
other-
operations, yes.
any regular operations, yes. Now, I could see it's like he may be saying it now, but I have no confidence. I don't trust a single word coming out of that man's paperwork, out of that man's mouth, to just have him think I can do whatever I want, being the majority stockholder. Once I get the money in my pocket, what's stopping me from whoever buys it privatizing the company again?
I'll tell you, are a number of things that are making me think that this is not an absolute, because there are, in my view, there are several things that are stopping that whole situation from occurring. First of all is something we may not know as much about as we think, and that is not just the ego of Vince McMahon, but everything that Vince McMahon is in terms of a psyche and personality. Now, hear me out on this. We all know that Vince McMahon has an ego. He's an over-the-top cartoon character of a human being. This part we know. But what we don't know is Vince McMahon. Very few, if any, of the people who are listening to us right now have actually met Vince McMahon. None of us are ever going to meet Vince McMahon. Even if we do, we're not going to know everything that goes on in his head. So when I see his ego at work, I'm not seeing just the ego. I am seeing the ego that wants what he built to be great. I also see a lot of his ego in, I want to be the one that makes it great. When we have a system that has shown objectively that he's not the best person to be in charge of creative decisions anymore, and there's ratings, there's evidence, there's money, there's all these different numbers that prove that, well, there's other ways that he can make a positive impact and still be active in this thing that he's still so passionate about, for good or for ill. And I believe that does include making the most money and turning it into a big bona fide success before the end of his life. There's so many different ways that this can go, and we haven't even gotten to just this change of life yet, where the meaning he gets from WWE, which we may never know the full extent of, there's more than one way to gain meaning from something in your life. You don't necessarily have to be always doing all the same stuff, all the same things that you used to 30, 40 years ago. if you can still take on a different role and still have it be a role of significance and importance and success. And I think there is a chance, although again, I do not know Vince McMahon, but I do believe there's an honest chance that he is sincere in what he says, that being the chairman of the board, or along with a couple of his friends who will think like-minded on it, there is a chance that it will scratch that itch. But let's say I'm wrong. Let's say he does end up making this power grab and say, well, I need to take control. I need to be in charge of creative again. I need to do it this way. First of all, like we established before, that has been proven to be objectively false at this point. That illusion has been totally shattered. So that's not as big of a factor as it once was. Second of all, we also still at this point have shareholders. So if he does not deliver on everything he's saying, or does one thing to get his foot in the door and then does something else, there are some potential lawsuits out there. And he could be charged with fraud for deliberately and willfully misrepresenting himself. And three, there's also the issue of company morale. One of the people who resigned from the board was actually one of the people who was the lead investigator internally of the whole affair to begin with. I think his name is Manjit Singh. I'm probably butchering that name. Yeah. But yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen that name floating around. So there's on that level, people are already displeased by this. The talent level is already massive. We already know that as fans. The fan base is already very cautious. Obviously, you're listening to us talk. So there's a lot of hesitation, a lot of worry that we're going to be returning to the bad old days, which nobody seems to want, including prospective buyers of the company. And we haven't even gotten to the biggest elephant in the room, the biggest thing that I really haven't heard too many people comment on yet, of why I don't think this is going to go down the way that we think. And that's Tony Khan. Because now we actually have a viable alternative for the fan base, for the potential market share, for potential talent to go. So really, because again, Tony Khan was being a bit of a memeing shitlord on Twitter today. It was like, oh, everyone at work is being so nice to me. I wonder why. Like, it's a little bit of a joke, obviously, but it's reflecting a very true reality here. If now that there's a viable alternative for the top wrestling talent in the world to go, if Vince actually does take control of creative again and no one stops him, then WWE as a whole are basically creating their own competition and giving them all the firepower that they need, which, if you think about the history of AEW, that's how they even got their start. There was a very clear and obvious void left by the WWE and Vince McMahon at the time's booking style, that they basically made their own competition by not satisfying their core audience. And if WWE, if Vince McMahon comes back and creates that void once again, he's basically doing Tony Khan's job for him. And he's going to make it way, way easier for them to capitalize on market share and ad revenue. And if it's not going to WWE, it will go to AEW. And I don't think either employees, wrestlers, or anybody, or the stockholders for that matter, on WWE's side is going to want that at all.
Yeah, I'm just going to end my point by saying this. Okay, I'm 50-50. It's like I'm going to choose to believe that Vince McMahon took this time away to gain back his smart businessman persona in order to get this sale done. Okay, I'm gonna choose to believe that he's gonna check his ego at the door and do what's best for the company. Right now, I'm gonna believe that, but there's that 50% chance of me that's just like the front part of my brain is saying he's got to do the smart thing. The back part of my brain is like, he's got to be that jackass, isn't he? And that's just the way it's going to be because that's Vince McMahon. That's the personality I've always known him as. From what I see in public, what I see on the screen, what I hear in the backstage reports and all that, it's like schizophrenia 101. Smart businessman, stupid everything else. Smart businessman, but when the ego takes over, that's when all hell breaks loose. It's like so it's like, okay, he's coming back to facilitate a sale. Okay, that's good language. That's good businessman speak. Hey, maybe we've got the businessman Vince McMahon here. Okay, that's fine. But if that ego kicks in, watch out. That's all I'm saying.
So with all that being said, with all this talk of a sale, the only other question that I've seen floating around at this point is who is going to be a potential buyer of WWE at this point. I've heard a lot of things. I've heard Comcast, which owns NBC. I've heard Amazon. I've heard Fox. I've even heard that supposedly some holders in Saudi Arabia might possibly be interested in making a bid on this. So I guess in the form of a scholar's quick talk, in a perfect world, who would you want to see buy WWE if a purchase is to happen?
If a purchase is to happen, and going with the names that you put out, okay, Fox already has SmackDown. Keep it going. If Fox Network wants to buy it, that's fine. Amazon has football. Stay away. That's it.
Fair enough. Fox, I can see them doing it, but I feel like Comcast also has, because of Peacock, they also have a working relationship. And not for nothing, I would not like to not have to get invested in another streaming service again. I'd like to keep something that I already have, but if I do,
does Fox actually have a streaming service?
Not if they do, not a major one outside of the regular TV networks.
Yeah, I don't think they actually have a streaming service, so Fox probably isn't involved.
That's also why I'm thinking here. I'm thinking strictly in terms of streaming services. So I'm either thinking that Comcast is gonna pick them up, or
Comcast or Disney.
That was gonna be my next guess. Like if they actually add, if they add the WWE catalog and then their version of all their network and programming to Disney Plus, that is probably one of the biggest. They're going to automatically turn it into one of the biggest streaming services out there, and I'll sign up automatically.
If Disney buys it, it'll probably just go to Hulu. Just because you guys are talking Fox, I'm like, you guys are basically just talking about Disney, since Disney owns it.
You know what? You bring up a good point. Like it could.
But
is Hulu on like Disney, or is Disney on Hulu?
And Disney owns Hulu. Yeah.
There you go.
So all it's right. So WWE would be on two streaming services, because if Disney picks it up, they're gonna put it on Disney Plus too, and they're gonna keep it on Hulu, because did they stop doing like the shortened episodes on Hulu?
I don't have Hulu. They went over to Peacock.
No.
Because Hulu used to, they didn't have the rights for the full 3 hours of Raw. They put like a 2-hour version together.
Yeah.
and they'd do that, and they'd have the full SmackDown. So I don't know if that went away when they went to Peacock, but
It's possible
they
because
still
I
but they
haven't I
still
don't hear anything about
but it's
WWE being
also
shown
like
on Hulu.
but it's also like Hulu was still a thing when they had their own network, when they had the WWE network.
Mm-hmm.
They still were putting stuff on Hulu, so it was so they're already on Hulu technically. If they've already been on Hulu, I'm not sure if they still are. So it's
I don't
easy
think they
enough
are.
to put it. So it's
I
easy
think
enough to
because of the
put that back
Peacock
on.
deal, I don't think so.
Yeah, I've pretty much talked myself into it. I'd like to see ABC/Disney take them, because I think they'd make more money off of the off of those streaming platforms.
But then you also have to think about, if Disney buys this, would they want to put their own writers? If they want to add their own writers to the creative?
I honestly highly doubt that. Even if they
Oh,
could, which they could,
I have
I
a
don't
good
think they
feeling
would
that they
want to
would.
mess around with a good thing. I feel like they would want to leave the people who know in charge of that. If anything, if the mouse does end up buying WWE, it's going to be more on the terms of like marketing and merchandising and just taking advantage of the intellectual property rather than the core television show itself, if you know what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, that's just my guess.
I would say, honestly, I would say like Comcast, NBC, Universal. I think since they already have their deal, I could just see them essentially just upgrading their deal, move SmackDown back to USA, and just keep it on that. Because let's be real, when it comes to the USA Network, WWE television is their biggest draw, and I could see them working on a deal that gives them more money and have SmackDown back on the USA Network, and just have WWE be their biggest thing. I don't see them doing like another Spike TV back in like
No, definitely not. Those days are done.
Those days are done. I see them just staying. I even think that it'll even affect their the sale deal. Yeah, with all of it. Raw, SmackDown, NXT, just one going, two staying.
Yeah, that absolutely is a possibility. And really, it's that kind of thing that makes me confident that, as scary as it is today, I am very confident that there's a solid chance that what's been proven to work will not be interrupted at this point, and things could very well and actually potentially end up very well for WWE and for the fan base as a whole. But as always, only time will tell. But now it's a time where we pitch it over to, before we forget, before we pitch it over to you, our fellow fans, we do have a quick announcement to make, because looking on the calendar, we do have the Royal Rumble coming up. And when it comes to this show, that only means one thing. We're talking about the 13th annual Royal Rumble prediction game. So we're here to announce that next week, the Royal Rumble game will be live. You can place your predictions, and if all circumstances permit, there might be a prize up for grabs this year. So we'll see how it goes, and there's only one way to find out. Check out all of our social media. Find us all across Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, wherever you find us, because the Royal Rumble game will not be too far behind. So follow us all across the internet. Scholar Tarek, where can they reach you?
You can find me trying to be optimistic, but I have no confidence in Vince McMahon. I think his ego will get the best of him. This is the man who's torn up scripts of shows and writing them the day of the shows. So you could find me being more cautious at the Avatar.
And Brian, where can they reach you?
You can reach me at Atomic Beanpole.
And you can catch me on Twitter at I'm Robbie Rage. And for all of these social media accounts and all the links and more, check out our link tree in the description. That's linktree/Scholars of Wrestling for all those links and more, including when the this year's Royal Rumble game ends up launching next week. But until then time, that's all we got for this week. But we will be back, as we always are, because you know who we are. We are the Scholars of Wrestling, and you have just been schooled. You're welcome.
You're welcome.
See you all for another week of fun and games.
No fun with Vince.